Before we begin, I want to take a moment to thank each of you for being part of this incredible journey. If you're enjoying these stories of empowerment, consider subscribing. It's completely free and helps us build this amazing community. Now, let's dive into today's story. The crystal champagne flute felt cool against my palm as I watched my husband Thomas raise his glass at the head of our dining table. The late autumn sunlight streaming through our penthouse windows caught the diamond on Victoria's finger, my diamond, though she didn't know it yet. The engagement ring Thomas had given me 7 years ago, now resized to fit her manicured hand. "To new beginnings," Thomas announced, his voice carrying that smooth confidence I'd once found charming. Our dinner guests, mostly his colleagues, from Barrett Industries, raised their glasses in response. Victoria beamed beside him, her perfectly styled blonde hair catching the light. She looked every bit the wealthy heiress everyone believed her to be. If only they knew. I took a small sip of champagne, maintaining my carefully crafted expression of polite resignation, the same look I'd worn 3 months ago when Thomas announced he was leaving me for Victoria Barrett, apparent heir to the Barrett Industries fortune. The same look I'd maintained through the divorce proceedings, through the pitying glances, through the whispered gossip about how the plain, modest wife had lost her husband to a younger, richer woman. "Elena," Thomas called out, his voice dripping with false kindness. "Thank you for joining us today. It means so much that you can be civil about all this. Civil. As if I had any choice but to attend this engagement dinner." As CEO of Barrett Industries, I needed to maintain appearances, even if only 3 people in the world knew I held that position. "Of course," I replied softly, playing my role perfectly. "We're all adults here." Victoria shifted uncomfortably, in her chair, the only person at the table who seemed genuinely uncomfortable with my presence. Perhaps she had enough conscience to feel guilty about taking another woman's husband. Or perhaps she simply didn't want the ex-wife at her engagement. Celebration. If she only knew she was sitting in my chair, in my penthouse, drinking my champagne. "Elena's been so understanding," Thomas continued, addressing the table at large. "Really, it's been the most amicable divorce I could have hoped for. She didn't even fight me on the assets." A few guests nodded approvingly, while others stared at their plates. They probably thought I was a fool for not demanding more in the divorce. After all, Thomas's position as chief marketing officer at Barrett Industries made him quite wealthy. But I hadn't wanted his money. I had my own. "Will you be staying in?" "The city?" Victoria's friend Sophie asked me, probably trying to be kind. "It must be difficult, starting over at your age." I was 35, hardly ancient, but I smiled demurely. "I have a small apartment downtown. Nothing fancy, but it suits my needs." "Have you thought about dating again?" another guest inquired. "I know a wonderful therapist who specializes in helping women rebuild after divorce." "Elena's not really the dating type," Thomas interrupted. "She's more focused on her volunteer work at the women's shelter. Very admirable." More nods of approval. Sweet Elena, simple Elena, dedicating herself to charity work while her ex-husband married into one of the city's wealthiest families. If they could see my real office, 60 floors up in the Barrett Industries building, where I spent my days running the company Victoria thought she would inherit. My phone buzzed quietly in my lap. A message from Marcus, my chief of operations. "Board meeting moved to 7 a.m. tomorrow. Acquisition paperwork ready for your review." I excused myself to use the powder room, my heels clicking against the marble floors I'd selected when we bought this penthouse. In the privacy of the bathroom, I checked the acquisition documents. Everything was in order for tomorrow's announcement. Barrett Industries would be acquiring Thomas's pet project, the marketing firm he'd been trying to build on the side. He and I thought Victoria's family connections had finally earned him his big break. He had no idea I was the one who had orchestrated everything. As I returned to the dining room, I heard Thomas regaling the table with the story of how he met Victoria at a charity gala. It was like fate, he said, squeezing her hand. Sometimes you just know when something is meant to be. I remembered another story he used to tell, about meeting a quiet girl at a coffee shop, about how her modesty and kindness had won his heart. But that was before he'd gotten a taste of corporate success, before his ambition had overshadowed everything else. Little did he know, every promotion, every opportunity, every success he'd achieved at Barrett Industries had been carefully orchestrated. By me. I'd been testing him, watching to see if power would corrupt him. It had. Tomorrow would mark the beginning of the end, not just for Thomas, but for the carefully constructed illusion Victoria had lived in her entire life. Because while she thought she was the heir to the Barrett fortune, the truth was far more complicated, and I was done watching from the shadows. The dinner continued, a symphony of crystal and silver, of practiced laughs and rehearsed stories. With each passing moment, with each toast to the happy couple, I felt the weight of tomorrow's revelation growing heavier, sweeter. After all, revenge, like the finest champagne, is best served cold. The morning of the board meeting dawned crisp and clear. I arrived at Barrett Industries at 5:30 a.m., using my private elevator to reach the executive floor. The early hour ensured I wouldn't run into Victoria, who sometimes liked to play at being an executive by showing up at 9 for coffee with the department heads. Marcus waited in my office, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, one of the few people who knew my true identity. He'd been my father's right hand before becoming mine, helping maintain the illusion that Barrett Industries was run by a reclusive board of directors rather than a single CEO. "The papers are ready," he said, sliding a folder across my desk. "Thomas's company valuation came in last night. It's worth about 1/10 of what he claims." I smiled, remembering Thomas's boasts at dinner about his company's explosive growth. "And the audit?" Confirmed our suspicions. "He's been inflating his numbers, hoping to attract our attention." Marcus's expression remained professional, but I caught the glimmer of anticipation in his eyes. "He's also taken out several high-interest loans using his projected acquisition payout as collateral." Perfect. Thomas had laid the groundwork for his own destruction, driven by the same greed that had led him to leave me for Victoria. I opened my laptop, reviewing the morning's agenda. "Is everything prepared for the 9 o'clock meeting?" "Yes." "Thomas. And his executive team will be here to finalize the acquisition. Victoria's requested to attend as well, her first major business decision as the future head of Barrett Industries." Marcus's tone carried a hint of irony. I thought about Victoria's role in all this. She wasn't entirely to blame. She'd been raised believing she would inherit her father's company, never knowing that James Barrett had sold his controlling interest to my father 20 years ago. Her monthly allowance, her lavish lifestyle, even her position as Vice President of Public Relations were all maintained by me, part of the agreement that had kept the Barrett name on the building. "How should we handle the seating?" Marcus asked, pulling up the conference room layout. "Put Thomas next to Victoria. I want them to experience this together." I stood, walking to the window wall that overlooked the city. Somewhere down there, Thomas was probably rehearsing his presentation, dreaming of his imminent success. My phone buzzed, a message from Sarah, my head of security. "Mr. Morrison has arrived early, currently in the lobby with his team." "Let's give them the executive welcome," I instructed Marcus. "Full access passes, premium coffee service, the works. Let them feel like they've already won." Marcus nodded, understanding the strategy. In business, like in revenge, it was essential to let your opponents believe they were in control, right until the moment you pulled the rug out from under them. I spent the next hour reviewing the real acquisition documents, not the generous offer Thomas expected, but a hostile takeover that would absorb his company at a fraction of its claimed value. His inflated numbers and fraudulent projections would void any legal protection, leaving him vulnerable to not just financial ruin, but potential criminal charges. At 8:45, Victoria's private elevator chimed. I switched my office to secure mode, walls turning opaque, screens going dark. Through the security feed, I watched her stride into the executive suite, wearing a power suit that had probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Thomas met her with a kiss, both of them radiating the confidence of people who thought they were about to witness their greatest triumph. If only they knew they were dressed for their own funeral. Shall we begin? Marcus asked, gathering the documents. I took one last look at the security feed. Thomas was now holding court in the conference room, charming the junior executives with practiced ease. Victoria sat beside him, playing the role of supportive fiancé and future company heir. Yes, I replied, slipping on my CEO jacket, perfectly tailored Armani that cost more than Thomas's entire wardrobe. It's time they learned who really controls their fortune. The stage was set. The players were in position, and in exactly 15 minutes, let the game begin. 9 o'clock arrived with the precision of a Swiss watch. I stood in the private antechamber adjacent to the main conference room, listening to the muffled voices through the wall. Marcus had arranged the seating perfectly. Thomas and Victoria. Front and center, their expectations of triumph about to crumble. The board is ready, Sarah murmured through my earpiece. Live feeds are active in all regional offices. I checked my reflection in the antechamber's mirror, adjusting my CEO badge, the one I'd never worn in public. For years, I'd conducted board meetings through video calls, my face obscured by strategic lighting and digital filters. Today, everything would change. Mr. Morrison, I heard Marcus begin through the speakers. Before we proceed with the acquisition discussion, the board has an important announcement. A pause. I could picture Thomas leaning forward eagerly, Victoria squeezing his hand under the table. They probably thought this was the moment their engagement would be officially celebrated, their future at Barrett Industries secured. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus continued, please welcome our Chief Executive Officer who will be conducting this meeting in person. The door opened silently as I stepped into the conference room, the morning sun streaming through the floor-to-ceiling. Windows cast my shadow across the polished table. 20 faces turned toward me, expressions morphing from anticipation to confusion to shock. Thomas's coffee cup froze halfway to his mouth, his face draining of color as recognition dawned. Victoria's perfectly manicured hand flew to her throat, her eyes widening as she struggled to process what she was seeing. Good morning, I said, my voice carrying easily through the stunned silence. For those who don't know me, I'm Elena Chen, Chief Executive Officer of Barrett Industries. The room erupted in whispers. A junior executive dropped his tablet. Victoria's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Elena. Thomas managed, his voice cracking. What is this? I moved to the head of the table, each click of my heels against the marble floor echoing like a judge's gavel. This, Thomas, is business. With a nod to Marcus, the room's screens came to life, displaying the real acquisition documents. Let's discuss your company's valuation, shall we? Particularly these interesting discrepancies our audit team has uncovered. Thomas's face flushed red, then white as his eyes scanned the numbers. Every inflated projection, every fraudulent claim highlighted in damning detail. His fingers gripped the table's edge so hard his knuckles turned white. There must be some mistake, he stammered. Victoria's family. The Barrett family, I interrupted smoothly, sold their controlling interest to my father 20 years ago. Victoria's position, her allowance, even this building. Everything has been under my control since I took over as CEO 5 years ago. Victoria stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. That's impossible. Your father, I continued, softening my tone slightly, made a difficult decision to save this company during the recession. The agreement maintained the Barrett name and provided for your family's lifestyle, but the real power has always been elsewhere. Tears welled in Victoria's eyes as 2 decades of assumptions crumbled. She turned to Thomas, perhaps seeking reassurance, but he was too busy frantically texting what I assumed were his lawyers. "Your phones won't work," I informed them. "Security protocol. Now, shall we discuss the terms of the actual acquisition?" I opened my folder, extracting the documents that would effectively end Thomas's entrepreneurial dreams. "Given the fraudulent nature of your company's financials, we'll be pursuing a hostile takeover at market value, approximately 1/10 of your claimed worth." "You can't do this," Thomas protested, desperation creeping into his voice. "I can, and I am." I turned to address the room at large. "Barrett Industries has a zero-tolerance policy for fraud. Mr. Morrison's actions have forced our hand." Victoria had sunk back into her chair, her engagement ring, my old ring, catching the light as she pressed her hands to her face. The irony wasn't lost on me, but this wasn't about petty revenge. This was about justice, about consequences, about maintaining the integrity of the company my father had saved and I had built. "Now," I said, sliding the takeover documents across the table, "shall we proceed with the signatures?" The real game was just beginning. The next hour unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance of corporate destruction. Thomas's lawyers, finally reached through the building's secure line, advised him to sign the takeover documents immediately. Their hushed phone conversation, broadcast clearly through the room's superior audio system, revealed what I already knew. He had no choice. "The loan repayment schedules are particularly interesting," I commented, sliding another document across the table. 3 different high-interest loans, all backed by projected acquisition profits that will never materialize. That's quite a predicament. Thomas's hand shook as he scrawled his signature on page after page. Victoria had excused herself 10 minutes ago, escorted by Sarah to my private office for what would undoubtedly be an equally difficult conversation about her family's true financial situation. "Elena," Thomas tried again, his voice barely a whisper. "We can talk about this. Our history is precisely why you should have done better due diligence." I cut him off smoothly. "Though I suppose spending your evenings sampling my wine cellar," with Victoria left little time for actual research. The remaining executives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Through my earpiece, Marcus informed me that company-wide emails were already circulating about the dramatic boardroom revelation. By noon, every major business publication would have the story. Barrett Industries CEO Elena Chen takes control of Morrison Marketing amid fraud allegations. "Clear out your office by 3, I instructed Thomas as he signed the final document. "Security will supervise. Any attempt to remove or delete company data will result in immediate legal action." "My clients," he protested weakly. "My team are now Barrett Industries employees, those who pass our ethics screening." I turned to Sarah, who had just returned. "Please escort Mr. Morrison to his office. Standard exit protocols." As Thomas was led away, shoulders slumped in defeat, Marcus distributed new folders to the remaining executives. "Our restructuring plan," I explained. "Morrison Marketing's legitimate clients will be absorbed into our existing marketing division. Their employees will undergo standard performance reviews." "And Victoria?" someone dared to ask. "Miss Barrett remains a valued member of our corporate family," I replied diplomatically, "though her role will be redefined." In my office, I found Victoria staring out the window, her usual confidence shattered. The private Barrett Industries file lay open on my desk. She'd finally learned the truth about her family's arrangement with my father. "The monthly allowance will continue," I said, closing the door. "Your lifestyle won't change, provided you maintain discretion about today's events." She turned, tears streaking her perfect makeup. "Did you orchestrate all of this? Getting Thomas to notice me, making him think—" "No," I interrupted firmly. "Thomas's choices were his own. His greed, his ambition, his decision to pursue you, those were all genuine. I simply watched and waited. For revenge? For justice. I sat behind my desk, the position of power now openly acknowledged. Thomas violated corporate ethics and federal laws. The consequences would have been the same regardless of his personal choices. Victoria twisted my old engagement ring around her finger. And this? Was this part of your plan too? That was Thomas's idea. Pawning my ring to buy his ticket into what he thought was your fortune. I allowed myself a small smile. Consider it a parting gift. A reminder that appearances can be deceiving. Her laugh was hollow. Like father, like daughter. He never told me, about selling the company. All those years letting me believe. Parents often think they're protecting their children. I pressed a button, frosting the office windows for privacy. Your position in public relations can continue, but you'll report directly to Marcus now. Real work, real responsibilities. Victoria straightened, a glimmer of her old strength returning. And if I refuse? Then the Barrett name comes off the building and the true ownership becomes public record. I met her gaze steadily. Your choice. She nodded slowly, understanding the new reality. As she left my office, head held high despite everything, I felt a mixture of respect and pity. She too had been playing a role all these years, though she hadn't known it. My phone buzzed, a message from Thomas's lawyer requesting a private meeting. Undoubtedly, they wanted to negotiate better terms. But as I watched Victoria's retreating figure through the security feed, I knew there would be no compromises. After all, in business as in life, true power lies not in the deals you make, but in the ones you walk away from. By 2 o'clock, the business world was buzzing with the morning's revelations. I watched from my office as CNBC ran their breaking news coverage. Mystery CEO of Barrett Industries revealed in dramatic corporate takeover. The stock had jumped 12% on the news. The market apparently approved of a CEO who could maintain absolute secrecy while orchestrating a perfect corporate strike. The PR team has prepared your official statement, Marcus announced, entering with a thick folder. And the private club memberships Thomas acquired through his position have all been revoked. I scanned the club cancellation notices with satisfaction. The Union League, the Metropolitan, the Alpine Club, all those exclusive spaces where Thomas had paraded Victoria around, bragging about their future empire. Now those same doors would be closed to him. His corporate credit cards? I asked, signing the necessary forms. Deactivated the moment he left the building, though he did try to make one last purchase, a rather expensive lunch delivery to his office while he was cleaning it out. I allowed myself a small smile. Denied, I assume? Of course. He had to pay cash. Marcus's expression remained professional, but his eyes twinkled. The security footage of that interaction is memorable. My phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. Thomas Morrison has left the building. Personal items secured and archived per protocol. Attempts to download client. Files blocked and logged. Send the evidence to our legal team, I instructed. Every attempted data theft strengthens our position. I turned to the wall of screens displaying various news coverage. The business channels were running side-by-side photos. Elena the modest, ex-wife at last night's dinner, and Elena the powerful CEO revealed this morning. A notification popped up on my private screen. Thomas had just posted on LinkedIn, attempting to control the narrative. Excited to announce new entrepreneurial opportunities. I forwarded it to legal. His non-compete agreement had clearly slipped his mind. Victoria's father is requesting a meeting, Marcus noted, checking his tablet. He's flying in from Monaco tonight. Schedule him for breakfast tomorrow, the usual place. James Barrett and I had a long-standing arrangement, monthly meetings, at an exclusive restaurant where we maintained the illusion of the Barrett family's continued corporate control. Tomorrow's conversation would be different. A soft knock at my door revealed Linda from HR carrying more files. "The Morrison marketing employee interviews are complete," she reported. 80% are salvageable. The rest were hired through personal connections. "Thomas's drinking buddies and golf partners," I translated. "Process their severance and flag anyone who shows particular promise, especially those he overlooked for promotion." My next appointment arrived precisely on schedule. Thomas's former assistant, a sharp-eyed woman named Rachel who had spent years managing his calendar while he took credit for her ideas. "Please, sit," I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "I understand you have a master's degree in digital marketing that Thomas failed to notice?" Rachel straightened, clearly nervous but determined. "Yes, Ms. Chen. I completed it through night classes while working here." "Impressive dedication. We have an opening for digital strategy director. The position reports directly to me." I slid a contract across the desk. "Interested?" The joy that bloomed across her face was genuine. As she left with her new contract, I turned back to the financial reports. Thomas's creditors, sensing blood in the water, had begun calling in his loans. His attempt to leverage the acquisition into personal wealth had backfired spectacularly. "His Porsche has been repossessed," Sarah reported through the intercom. "And his realtor just listed the Hamptons house." I remembered that house, the one he'd bought to impress Victoria, claiming it was a family property. The down payment had come from selling my grandmother's antique jewelry collection during our divorce. Some losses cut deeper than others. "One more thing," Marcus added, pausing at the door. "The charity gala committee called. They want to know if you'll be taking Thomas's place as chairman." I thought about all the galas where I'd played the quiet, supportive wife while Thomas networked. But double the fundraising goal. It's time this company's charitable works reflected its true leadership. After all, real power isn't just about winning, it's about transforming victory into lasting change. The real work was just beginning. The evening settled over the city like a velvet curtain, office lights twinkling like stars against the darkening sky. I stood in my private elevator, descending to the secure parking level where James Barrett would be arriving any minute. He'd insisted on meeting tonight rather than waiting for our scheduled breakfast, his private jet landing at Teterboro just 30 minutes ago. "He's alone," Sarah confirmed through my earpiece. "Though he tried to bring his lawyer. We discouraged that." The parking garage was silent except for the click of my heels against concrete. James Barrett's Mercedes pulled in precisely at 8 p.m., the same car he'd kept from his CEO days, maintained now by my company's expense account. Elena. He emerged from the car, looking older than I remembered. His once dark hair had gone completely silver, his face lined with fresh worry. "We need to talk." "Your daughter already tried that," I replied, leading him to the executive conference room we kept on the secure level. "She's handling the situation better than expected." James sank into a leather chair, looking deflated. 20 years of keeping this secret, only to have it explode because of some fortune-hunting marketing executive. "Thomas was merely the catalyst," I corrected, pouring 2 glasses of the scotch James had always favored. This revelation was inevitable. Victoria deserved to know the truth. "I was protecting her," he protested weakly, accepting the drink. "After the recession nearly destroyed us, your father's buyout saved more than the company. It saved our family's reputation, our lifestyle, while making Barrett Industries more profitable than ever," I finished. "My father understood the value of the Barrett name, just as I do. That's why Victoria's position and allowance will continue." James took a long sip of scotch. "And Thomas? Victoria's devastated about the engagement." "Thomas made his choices. The fraud allegations alone would have ended his career. His personal decisions merely determined the timing." Through my tablet, I pulled up the latest financial reports. Barrett Industries stock had closed up 15%, adding billions to our market cap. The business world loved a well-executed power play. "The board wants to remove the Barrett name," I informed him, watching his face fall further. They think it's time to rebrand given the circumstances. You can't, he whispered. The agreement with your father is with me now, I reminded him, and I'm willing to maintain it, with some adjustments. Victoria will take a real role in the company, learning the business from the ground up. No more figurehead positions. Relief flooded his features. She's smarter than people realize. Given the chance, she'll earn her place, I agreed. Unlike Thomas, who tried to steal his. My phone buzzed with an update from Marcus. Thomas's attempt to access his frozen corporate accounts had triggered our security protocols. His passwords were now permanently revoked. There's something else, James said, pulling out an envelope. Thomas contacted me an hour ago. He's threatening to go public with the whole story. The secret buyout, the fake Barrett fortune, everything. I accepted the envelope, already knowing what we'd find inside. Our surveillance had caught Thomas's desperate email to James hours ago. Let him, I replied calmly. Every major business publication already has the real story, embargoed for tomorrow's news cycle. Barrett Industries reveals 20-year strategic partnership with founding family. Focus on innovation, growth, and mentoring next-generation leadership. James stared at me, understanding dawning in his eyes. You're not just managing the crisis. You're transforming it into an advantage. Crisis management is about controlling the narrative, I explained, remembering lessons learned at my father's knee. Tomorrow, Barrett Industries will be hailed for its long-term strategic thinking. Victoria will be positioned as an emerging leader, mentored by an experienced CEO, and Thomas will be revealed as a fraud who tried to manipulate his way into corporate power, James finished, a hint of admiration creeping into his voice. My phone buzzed again. Thomas had just received the press embargo notification. His lawyer's response was immediate, full cooperation in exchange for minimal publicity. Your daughter deserves better, I told James, standing to end our meeting. Give her the chance to become more than just an heir. Let her earn her place in this company. As James left, I watched his car disappear into the night. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to reshape Barrett Industries. But tonight, I had one more task to complete. It was time to call Thomas's creditors. Dawn broke over the city with explosive headlines. Every major business publication led with our carefully crafted narrative. Barrett Industries reveals innovative 20-year succession plan. The Wall Street Journal praised our long-term strategic thinking. Bloomberg highlighted the seamless integration of next-generation leadership. Thomas is on CNBC, Sarah announced, turning up the volume on my office wall screen. My ex-husband sat in a remote studio, attempting to salvage his reputation. His usual polished appearance had crumbled, his tie slightly askew, dark circles under his eyes. The acquisition terms were predatory, he was saying, desperation bleeding through his practiced corporate smile. Elena Chen orchestrated this. Entire. The feed cut abruptly. Technical difficulties, the anchor announced smoothly. We'll be right back after this break. Remarkable timing, I commented to Marcus, who was reviewing the morning's social media analytics. Almost as if someone noticed their broadcast delay wasn't properly calibrated. Indeed, he replied dryly. In related news, CNBC's parent company just received an invitation to bid on Barrett Industries' new media contract. My private line rang, Thomas's biggest creditor, Meridian Capital. Ms. Chen? About Mr. Morrison's outstanding loans? Secure. Your interests immediately, I advised, examining my perfectly manicured nails. I've seen the real numbers. You're not the only one he borrowed from. The resulting domino effect took less than an hour. 3 banks called in their loans simultaneously. Thomas's remaining assets were frozen. The Hamptons house, already listed for sale, was now under court order. Victoria's doing well, Sarah reported, bringing in the mid-morning briefing. Her first real marketing meeting just ended? The team was impressed by her actual insights once she stopped playing the role of privileged heir. I nodded, genuinely pleased. Victoria's transformation from decorative figurehead to serious executive would be good for the company and for her. Mr. Morrison's former clients are calling, Marcus added. Apparently, he's been reaching out, claiming he can offer better rates through a new venture. Send them the non-compete documentation, I instructed, and forward his violation attempts. To legal. My screen flashed with an urgent message. Thomas had just arrived in the building lobby, demanding to see me. The security feed showed him disheveled, clutching a manila envelope. Let him up, I decided. Full security protocol. 10 minutes later, Thomas burst into my office, flanked by 2 guards. You've destroyed everything, he snarled, throwing the envelope on my desk. But I have proof. Emails showing how you manipulated company decisions, recordings of your secret meetings. You mean evidence that I was actively running my company? I opened the envelope, scanning its contents. How shocking! The world needs to know how you operated in secret, using the Barrett name. You mean how I maintained a successful 20-year partnership that quadrupled the company's value? I sorted the papers methodically. These will make excellent additions to tomorrow's Business Week feature. Elena Chen, The Art of Strategic Leadership. Thomas deflated slightly, his ammunition turning to ash. The loans. They're calling them all in. I'll lose everything. Much like you planned for me? I met his gaze steadily. When you liquidated our joint accounts before asking for divorce? When you sold my grandmother's jewelry to buy a house? For Victoria? I never meant to get caught. I pressed a button, and Sarah entered with a new set of documents. These are from your creditors. They're willing to restructure your loans, give you a chance to salvage something. Hope flickered in his eyes, quickly replaced by suspicion. Why would you help me? Because watching you struggle to repay legitimate debts over the next decade will be far more satisfying than watching you declare bankruptcy today. I gestured to the papers. Your choice. As Thomas signed the restructured loan agreements, effectively committing himself to years of financial servitude, my phone buzzed with another update. Our stock had jumped another 8%. The business world apparently appreciated a leader who could balance strategic ruthlessness with measured mercy. One last thing, I said, as Thomas turned to leave, broken but not completely destroyed. Victoria's engagement ring, my grandmother's ring. I'd like it back. Sometimes the smallest victories are the sweetest, and I had plans for that ring. Late afternoon sun streamed through my office windows as I examined my grandmother's ring, now safely returned to its rightful owner. The antique diamond caught the light, casting prism patterns across my desk. Sarah had just finished sanitizing it. Victoria had surrendered it without protest, perhaps understanding its true significance. The Thompson Group is here, Marcus announced through the intercom. All 6 board members. Perfect timing. Barrett Industries' largest client had scheduled an emergency meeting after the morning's revelations. They'd been Thomas's primary account, drawn in by his promises of special treatment through his supposed Barrett family connections. Send them in, I instructed, slipping the ring into its vintage box. Time to convert another crisis into opportunity. The Thompson executives filed, and led by their CEO, Richard Thompson, a man who had spent the last year believing Thomas would be his link to the Barrett fortune. His face betrayed nothing, but his slightly loosened tie suggested discomfort. Ms. Chen, he began, taking a seat. Today's news was unexpected. Was it? I pulled up their account history on my screen. Your company has enjoyed preferential pricing for the past year, Mr. Thompson. Surely you wondered about the sustainability of those rates. He shifted uncomfortably. Thomas assured us that his future wife's family connections would protect your sweetheart deal? I finished smoothly, a promise he had no authority to make. The other board members exchanged glances. They'd built their annual projections around Thomas's promised rates that had been bleeding Barrett Industries of profit. However, I continued, I've reviewed your complete portfolio. Your company's actual innovation potential is impressive, despite Thomas's mismanagement. I'm prepared to offer a new partnership structure. Sarah distributed folders containing my proposal. As the executives reviewed the terms, their expressions shifted from concern to intrigue. The rates were higher than Thomas's unsustainable promises, but lower than our standard pricing, in exchange for Thomson Group becoming our beta testing partner for new marketing technologies. This is actually better than our original arrangement, Richard admitted, studying the projections, because it's based on real value, not empty promises. I gestured to Victoria's empty office across the hall. Your new account manager will be starting next week. Someone who understands both innovation and accountability. Rachel Mills? Richard read from the document, surprised. Thomas's former assistant? The same Harvard MBA he kept relegating to coffee runs, I confirmed. I believe you'll find her. Insights more valuable than her predecessor's empty networking. As the Thomson team left, visibly relieved, Marcus brought in the latest market updates. Barrett Industries stock had stabilized at record highs. Our corporate governance now rated AA by all major agencies. Thomas's old country club called, Sarah reported, entering with fresh coffee. They're offering you his canceled membership. Apparently, they've had a sudden opening in their executive tier. I smiled, remembering all the times Thomas had excluded me from his club activities, claiming I wouldn't be comfortable in such elevated circles. Decline, but donate the membership fee to their staff education fund instead. My phone buzzed with a message from Victoria. First client presentation completed. They loved the new digital strategy. She's adapting well, Marcus observed, reviewing her department's analytics. The team actually listened once she started contributing real ideas instead of just trading on her name. A notification popped up on my secure screen. Thomas had just been spotted trying to enter his old clients' offices through their parking garage. Security had denied him access, adding another violation to his mounting non-compete infractions. His new studio apartment lease came through, Sarah noted, checking her tablet. It's above a convenience store in New Jersey. Quite a change from the penthouse. I thought about the modest apartment I'd maintained during my marriage, the one Thomas had mocked as beneath him. Have his first loan payment reminder sent there, certified mail. The day's final report arrived. Our HR department had completed reviewing all of Thomas's personnel decisions. Dozens of qualified candidates he'd dismissed for not fitting his executive image were being contacted for new interviews. The Charity Gala Committee sent over their proposed guest list, Marcus mentioned. They've seated Thomas at the singles table in the back kitchen. Adjust the seating, I instructed, surprising them both. Put him at the main table where he can watch everything he lost. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about exclusion. It's about forcing them to witness what they could have had. The Metropolitan Museum's grand ballroom sparkled with old money and new power. As chairwoman of this year's Charity Gala, I'd transformed the annual event from a simple fundraiser into a showcase of corporate responsibility. The guest list had been curated with surgical precision. Every major player in New York's business world, every influential board member, and one very uncomfortable ex-husband. Thomas just arrived, Sarah murmured through my discreet earpiece. He's wearing his backup tuxedo. The good one was apparently repossessed with his other luxury items. I surveyed the room from my position near the main stage. Thomas stood awkwardly, at the bar, nursing a drink he could barely afford. The other executives, once his eager drinking companions, now gave him a wide berth. Amazing how quickly social circles collapse when the illusion of power vanishes. Victoria's making quite an impression, Marcus observed, appearing at my elbow with updated donation figures. Indeed, my former rival was working the room with newfound authenticity, discussing actual marketing strategies instead of flaunting her supposed inheritance. The Richardson Group seems particularly interested in her digital expansion proposal. He continued. Their CEO asked for a meeting next week. I watched Victoria navigate a cluster of tech investors, her genuine knowledge now shining through the polished exterior. Schedule it, but make sure Rachel attends as well. They work best as a team. The evening's first surprise arrived in the IB form of James Barrett, making his first public appearance since the revelations. He moved through the crowd with practiced ease, though his smile seemed more genuine than I remembered. Elena? He greeted me warmly, playing his role perfectly. The transition plan announcement was masterful. The business press can't stop praising our long-term vision. The market rewards strategic thinking, I replied, noting how Thomas had shifted uncomfortably at the sight of his former almost father-in-law. Speaking of which, your daughter's new marketing initiative has attracted attention. James beamed with real pride. She called me yesterday, excited about some blockchain integration concept. I barely understood half of what she said, but she's finally finding her own path, I finished. Sometimes losing an illusion is the first step to discovering reality. The evening's program began with my welcome speech. Standing at the podium, I could feel Thomas's gaze burning into me as I announced Barrett Industries' unprecedented $10 million donation to STEM education for underprivileged women. Success brings responsibility, I told the assembled elite. Not just to our shareholders, but to future generations of innovators and leaders. The applause was genuine, the subsequent donation pledges substantial. Throughout the evening, I moved through the crowd with calculated grace, watching the subtle power plays unfold. Thomas attempted to approach several of his former clients, only to be smoothly intercepted by our security team. His last potential investor just declined, Sarah reported. Apparently, his new stealth startup isn't quite as appealing without the Barrett connection. A commotion near the dessert station drew my attention. Thomas, clearly having overindulged in the free champagne, was attempting to pitch some new venture to a group of clearly uncomfortable venture capitalists. Handle it, I instructed Marcus. Quietly. Within minutes, Thomas found himself guided to a quiet anteroom by two discreet security officers. Through the surveillance feed, I watched him slump into a chair, his false bravado finally cracking. Your car is ready, Mr. Morrison, one guard informed him professionally. Perhaps it's best to call it a night. Victoria approached me as Thomas was being escorted out, her expression thoughtful. That could have been me, she said softly, still playing pretend, living on borrowed power. But it's not, I reminded her. You chose to learn, to grow, to earn your place. She fingered the business card the Richardson Group's CEO had pressed into her hand. Thank you, for not destroying me along with him. You were never the target, I assured her, just caught in the crossfire of his ambition. As the gala wound down, I reviewed the evening's successes. New partnerships formed, charitable initiatives launched, and one final lesson delivered. Thomas's humiliation had been complete but subtle, exactly as planned. After all, true power doesn't need to shout. It simply arranges the perfect circumstances for truth to emerge on its own. The morning after the gala brought unexpected developments. I arrived at my office to find Marcus waiting with an unusual report. Overnight, Thomas had attempted to access our corporate servers from an internet cafe in New Jersey. He was trying to download his old client list, Marcus explained, sliding the cybersecurity report across my desk. But he triggered our honeypot system instead. What did he actually access? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Our IT team had prepared for this eventuality months ago. Fabricated files suggesting Barrett Industries is planning to divest its marketing division. He's already reached out to 3 venture capital firms, pitching himself as the perfect person to acquire it. I smiled, remembering how Thomas had always underestimated our technical capabilities. Let him run with it. The more resources he wastes chasing phantom opportunities, the better. Sarah entered with the morning's market briefing and a curious expression. "You'll want to see this," she said, pulling up a video on the main screen. It was security footage from Thomas's new apartment building, showing him engaged in an animated conversation with none other than Peter Maxwell, my father's old rival. "Maxwell Enterprises," I mused, watching the interaction. "They've been trying to get a foothold in our market for years. Thomas thinks he's found an ally." "Should we be concerned?" Marcus asked, already pulling up Maxwell's company profile. "On DQ. The contrary." I opened my secure files, retrieving documents I'd prepared years ago. Peter Maxwell never forgave my father for outmaneuvering him during the Barrett acquisition. Now he thinks he's found a weapon to use against us. The morning unfolded with precision as reports flowed in. Thomas and Maxwell had been spotted having breakfast at an upscale restaurant, Maxwell paying, of course. They'd spent 2 hours together, Thomas gesturing enthusiastically while Maxwell took notes. "Victoria's morning meeting with the Richardson Group went exceptionally well," Sarah reported, changing topics. "They're impressed with her blockchain integration proposal. Real impressed, not just politically impressed." I reviewed Victoria's presentation materials, noting how she'd transformed from someone playing at business to a genuine innovator. "Schedule a board review for her proposal. It's time she presented directly to the top." My private line rang, James Barrett, calling from his Monaco estate. "Elena, I just heard from Peter Maxwell. He's trying to verify some claims Thomas made about our company structure." "Let me guess. Thomas suggested the Barrett family might be interested in regaining control?" James's laugh was genuine. "Maxwell offered to help restore the natural order of the company. He thinks he's found our weak spot." "Perfect." I pulled up our contingency plans. "Maintain ambiguity. Let Maxwell believe there's family discord he can exploit." By midday, the trap was set. Maxwell Enterprises had scheduled a press conference for the following week, presumably to announce some sort of hostile action against Barrett Industries. Thomas had been spotted buying a new suit, on credit, naturally. The venture capital. "Firms are playing along beautifully," Marcus noted, reviewing their responses to Thomas's pitch. "They're stringing him along, making him think they're interested in his imaginary divestment opportunity." "How much has he spent preparing his proposal?" I asked, genuinely curious about the depth of his desperation. "He took out another personal loan this morning. High interest, predatory terms." Sarah's tone carried a hint of satisfaction. "He's borrowed against his future acquisition earnings." I thought about Thomas's pattern of leveraging imagined future gains, how it had become his signature weakness. "Monitor the loan situations. When the time comes, we'll want a complete picture of his financial obligations." A notification popped up. Victoria had just closed her first major client independently. Not through family connections or inherited position, but through genuine business acumen. The Richardson Group signed with her division, Sarah confirmed. Full contract, premium rates. They specifically requested her team. I sat back, contemplating the ways success and failure could intertwine. While Victoria rose through genuine merit, Thomas descended further into his web of deceptions and borrowed confidence. "One more thing," Marcus added, pausing at the door. "Maxwell's team has been researching your father's original Barrett acquisition. They think they've found a legal weakness." "Have they?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "No. They've found exactly what we wanted them to find. Sometimes, the best trap is the one your opponent thinks they've discovered on their own." The Maxwell Enterprises press conference was scheduled for 10 a.m., but by 8 a.m., our plan was already in motion. I sat in my office, watching multiple screens track various pieces moving into place. Thomas had arrived at Maxwell's headquarters, an hour early, wearing his new suit, practically vibrating with misplaced confidence. "The SEC filing is ready," Marcus announced, entering with a thick folder. "Everything's prepared exactly as discussed." I reviewed the documents one final time, For months, we'd let Maxwell's team think they were secretly investigating Barrett Industries' ownership structure. They'd found precisely what we'd wanted them to find: apparent weaknesses in the original acquisition, suggestions of improper documentation, hints of family discord. "Victoria's here," Sarah reported through the intercom. "She seems amused." Indeed, my former rival entered my office with a knowing smile. "Peter Maxwell just called my father again, trying to confirm their secret alliance against you. Dad played his part perfectly. And Thomas believes Maxwell will help him regain his position?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Victoria's laugh was genuine. "He's convinced this press conference will expose your fraudulent control of the company. He thinks Maxwell will emerge as his corporate savior." On the screens, I watched Maxwell's team assembling for their announcement. Their legal department looked particularly pleased with themselves, clutching folders of what they thought was damaging evidence. "The Richardson Group integration is complete," Marcus noted, checking his tablet. "All client data secured and transferred before Maxwell's announcement." I nodded, remembering how Thomas had bragged about bringing Richardson to Barrett Industries through his personal connections. Now they were firmly under Victoria's management, their contracts ironclad. "It's starting," Sarah announced, turning up the volume on the main screen. Peter Maxwell took the podium, his silver hair perfectly coiffed, his expression grave. Thomas stood to the side, trying to maintain a dignified pose despite his obvious excitement. "Maxwell Enterprises has uncovered serious irregularities in Barrett Industries' corporate structure," Maxwell began, his voice carrying that practiced tone of corporate concern. "The original acquisition of the Barrett family interests appears to have been improperly documented." I pressed a button on my desk. Instantly, every major financial newswire lit up with Barrett Industries' own announcement. "Strategic merger completed. Barrett Industries acquires Maxwell Enterprises' digital division." Maxwell faltered mid-sentence as aides rushed to the podium with urgent messages. On our screen, we could see the moment he realized what had happened. "The SEC filing is public," Marcus confirmed, watching the markets react. "Maxwell's shareholders are already calling for an emergency board meeting." Through the security feed, we watched Thomas's expression shift from triumph to confusion to horror as he realized his new ally had walked into a trap. "Should I tell?" "Him who orchestrated the merger?" Victoria asked, a hint of her old mischief returning. "Or let him figure it out himself?" "Oh, he'll know," I replied, standing to prepare for my own press conference. The acquisition team's report specifically credits his inside information about Maxwell's digital assets as crucial to the deal's success. Marcus pulled up Maxwell Enterprises' stock price, already dropping as the market processed the implications. Their digital division had been their fastest-growing segment, now legally separated and merged with Barrett Industries, through a complex series of holdings and options we'd spent months arranging. Thomas's new loan application was just denied, Sarah reported, checking her updates. Apparently, his association with Maxwell's failed takeover attempt makes him a high-risk client. I straightened my jacket, preparing to address the press. In 10 minutes, I would announce how Barrett Industries had protected itself from a hostile action by acquiring the aggressor's most valuable division. The business world would see it as a masterclass in corporate defense. "One last thing," Marcus added as we headed to the conference room. "Maxwell's board just canceled their press conference. Thomas was seen leaving through a side entrance. Have security send him the visitor badge invoice," I instructed. "Every detail matters." After all, when you're dismantling someone's delusions of grandeur, it's the small indignities that really drive the lesson home. The cameras were waiting, eager to document another Barrett Industries triumph. But this wasn't just about corporate strategy anymore. This was about showing Thomas that every betrayal, every attempt at manipulation, would only lead to his further downfall. Some lessons need to be taught multiple times before they truly sink in. The afternoon following Maxwell's failed press conference brought a flurry of activity to Barrett Industries. Financial analysts were practically tripping over themselves to upgrade our stock rating, while Maxwell Enterprises faced a shareholder revolt. In the midst of it all, a familiar name appeared on my visitor log. "Thomas's mother is here," Sarah announced, her tone carrying a hint of surprise. "She's requesting a meeting." Margaret Morrison, the woman who had spent years subtly criticizing my modest ambitions while praising her son's business acumen. The same woman who had enthusiastically welcomed Victoria as an upgrade from her disappointing former daughter-in-law. Send. Her up, I decided. This should be interesting. Margaret entered my office like a woman walking into battle, her designer handbag clutched like a shield. Her eyes widened as she took in the panoramic view, the elegant decor, the clear symbols of power she'd never associated with her son's simple ex-wife. "Elena," she began, then faltered, clearly struggling with the shift in dynamics. I need to discuss Thomas." Of course, I gestured to a chair. "How is he handling his latest setback?" She flinched at my directness. "He's staying with me. Now." The apartment, well, after this morning's events. His landlord discovered his connection to the Maxwell debacle and revoked his lease. I finished, consulting my screen. Apparently, being associated with a failed corporate raid attempt makes one an undesirable tenant. "He's not eating," Margaret blurted out. "He just sits there, watching business news, muttering about conspiracies and revenge. This morning, he tried to contact James Barrett again. Through a fake email account, yes." I pulled up the security report. Our systems intercepted it. Tears welled in Margaret's carefully made-up eyes. "What do you want from him? Haven't you taken enough?" "I haven't taken anything, Margaret. Every loss your son has suffered has been a direct result of his own choices and actions." I slid a folder across the desk. "But since you're here, you should know about these." She opened the folder, gasping as she recognized loan documents bearing Thomas's signature. "These interest rates, these terms, are predatory, yes. He's borrowed nearly $2 million in the past month, using increasingly desperate methods to secure funding. Each loan was tied to his imagined future success." "Oh God," Margaret whispered, the full scope of her son's situation finally dawning on her. "His trust fund is gone," I confirmed. "Spent on maintaining appearances and chasing impossible schemes. But I have a proposition for you." Sarah entered silently, placing a new set of documents on my desk. Margaret watched with growing apprehension as I outlined the terms. "Barrett Industries will acquire Thomas's debts," I explained. "In exchange, he agrees to undergo financial counseling, accept a position with one of our smaller subsidiaries in Denver, and most importantly, sign an ironclad agreement to cease all attempts at corporate maneuvering." "Denver?" Margaret's voice cracked. "But his whole life is here." "His whole illusion is here," I corrected gently. "This is an opportunity for a fresh start, Margaret. A real one, without the burden of crushing debt or the temptation of quick fixes." Through my office windows, I could see Victoria leading a client meeting in the conference room across the atrium. She caught my eye and nodded respectfully. Another woman who had chosen reality over illusion. "Why would you help him?" Margaret asked, clutching the proposal. "After everything—" "Because success isn't just about winning," I replied, remembering my father's words. "It's about knowing when victory is complete enough that mercy becomes possible." As Margaret left with the documents, Marcus entered with fresh market updates. Barrett Industries stock had closed at an all-time high, while Maxwell Enterprises was facing a board revolt. "Thomas has until tomorrow to decide," I informed him. "After that, the offer expires, and his creditors can proceed with collections." Sometimes, the most effective revenge isn't about destruction. It's about offering a path to redemption so humble that accepting it becomes its own punishment. The choice would be his, just like every choice that had led him here. The deadline for Thomas's decision arrived with the morning sun. I stood in my office watching dawn break over the city skyline when Sarah entered with news I'd been expecting. Thomas signed the agreement at 3 a.m., she reported, placing the documents on my desk. His mother drove him to the lawyer's office herself. Apparently, she refused to leave until he completed every signature. I reviewed the paperwork, extensive provisions for debt restructuring, relocation to Denver, mandatory financial counseling, and most importantly, a comprehensive non-interference agreement. Thomas had signed every page, his once confident signature, now shaky and diminished. His flight to Denver is booked for tomorrow morning, Marcus added, entering with the travel itinerary. We've arranged everything: apartment, basic furnishings, position at Western Digital Solutions. He'll start as a junior account manager. The irony wasn't lost on me. Thomas would now hold the same position he'd once mocked me for considering, early in our marriage. Have his new supervisor been briefed? Catherine Wong, Sarah confirmed. She's tough, but fair. Understands the situation completely. No special treatment, but no undue harassment either. A notification popped up on my screen, Victoria requesting a moment of my time. She entered carrying a sleek presentation folder, but her expression suggested this wasn't about business. I just heard about Thomas's decision, she said, taking a seat. Mom called. She's relieved, actually. Said it's the first sensible choice he's made in years. I studied the woman who had once been my unwitting rival. Your mother's always been more perceptive than people realize. How is she handling the Maxwell fallout? Better than expected. She's focusing on our educational foundation. Actually doing the charitable work she used to just pose for photos about. Victoria smiled wryly. Turns out having your illusions shattered can be surprisingly liberating. My phone buzzed, a message from James Barrett. Maxwell Enterprises board had just voted to accept our terms for acquiring their remaining digital assets. Peter Maxwell's attempt to exploit Thomas's vendetta had cost him his company's most valuable division and, ultimately, his CEO position. The board Richardson Group integration team needs final approval, Marcus reminded me, pulling up the relevant documents. They're eager to begin the blockchain implementation Victoria proposed. As I reviewed the contracts, Sarah monitored Thomas's preparations. For departure, his mother had hired movers to pack his remaining possessions, a task that took far less time than anyone expected. Amazing how quickly a life built on illusions could be condensed into a few boxes. One unusual request, Sarah noted, checking. Her tablet. He asked to keep a photo from our corporate archives, the old marketing team picture from his first year here. I remembered that photo. Thomas, newly hired and genuinely enthusiastic, before ambition and greed had corrupted his potential. Allow it. Sometimes a reminder of what you once were can guide what you might become. Victoria placed her presentation folder on my desk. Before I forget, the proposal for expanding our digital literacy program, not just for show anymore. Real initiatives, real impact. I opened the folder, noting how her business plans had evolved from superficial presentations to substantive strategies. The board meets Thursday. Lead with the ROI data. They respond well to social responsibility backed by solid numbers. A final alert appeared. Thomas's company credit cards, building access, and email accounts had been deactivated. By this time, tomorrow, he would be on a plane to Denver, starting a new life stripped of pretense and privilege. His mother sent a thank you note, Sarah mentioned softly, for giving him a chance to rebuild. I thought about choices and consequences, about the fine line between justice and vengeance. Sometimes the kindest cut is the one that forces you to finally face yourself. Through my window, I could see the city awakening, unknowing and uncaring, about the small dramas playing out in its towers of glass and steel. Somewhere out there, Thomas was preparing for a humbler life. Victoria was growing into her authentic power, and the business world was adjusting to the revelation of quiet strength. After all, true victory isn't measured in the moment of triumph, but in the lasting changes it leaves behind. 6 months after Thomas's departure to Denver, I stood in my office reviewing the quarterly reports. Barrett Industries had not only absorbed Maxwell's digital division successfully, but had transformed it into our fastest-growing segment. The Richardson Group contract, under Victoria's management, had exceeded all projections. Thomas's first performance review arrived from Denver, Sarah announced, placing a folder on my desk. Catherine Wong's assessment is interesting. I scanned the report. Thomas had started rough, struggling with the humility required for a junior position. But something had shifted in month 3. His natural talent for relationship building, stripped of artificial pretense, had begun to emerge. He's actually doing the work, I noted, surprised by the genuine praise in his supervisor's comments. No shortcuts, no manipulation attempts. His mandatory financial counseling sessions show similar progress, Marcus added, pulling up the compliance reports. He's living within his means for the first time in his adult life. A notification popped up, Victoria requesting a video conference from London, where she was overseeing the European expansion of our digital initiatives. Her image appeared on my screen, poised and professional in a way that had nothing to do with her former artificial polish. Elena, the Oxford partnership is confirmed, she reported, her excitement genuine. They want to integrate our blockchain education platform across their business school curriculum. I thought about how far she'd come from the woman who had once thought her only value lay in her family name. Schedule a board presentation for your return. This could be a global game changer. My private line rang, James Barrett calling from his new office at the charitable foundation he now ran with his wife. Their focus on corporate ethics and sustainable business practices had earned genuine respect in the industry. Elena, he greeted warmly. The foundation's annual report just came in. Your quiet contributions have helped us fund educational opportunities for over 1,000 students. I smiled, remembering my father's words about the responsibility that comes with power. Success means nothing if we don't use it to elevate others. Sarah entered with the afternoon briefing. The business press had finally stopped running stories about Barrett Industries' dramatic leadership revelation. Instead, they were focusing on our innovative corporate governance model and groundbreaking digital initiatives. Thomas's mother sent this, she said, placing an envelope on my desk. Inside was a simple thank you card and a recent photo. Thomas at a Denver soup kitchen, serving meals alongside his co-workers, his smile small but genuine. His last loan payment cleared, Marcus noted. He's officially debt-free. Catherine reports he celebrated by taking his team to lunch, at a modest diner within his budget. I thought about the man I had married, the one who had lost himself, to ambition and illusion. Perhaps this humbler version was closer to his true self. The charity gala committee called, Sarah mentioned. They're planning a tribute to your father's business legacy. They'd like you to deliver the keynote. I picked up my grandmother's ring from its place on my desk, the one Thomas had pawned, the one Victoria had returned. Its diamond caught the late afternoon sun, casting fragments of light across my success. Have the ring redesigned? I instructed Sarah. Something modern but incorporating the original stone. It's time for new traditions. Through my window, I could see the city stretching toward the horizon. Somewhere out there, Thomas was learning to live authentically. Victoria was building a legacy of her own. The Barretts were finding purpose in philanthropy. And I had stepped fully into my power, no longer hidden behind masks or shadows. The business world had adjusted to the revelation of quiet strength, learning that true authority doesn't need to announce itself to be felt. One last thing, Marcus said, pausing at the door. The business school called. They'd like you to give a guest lecture on corporate leadership. I smiled, thinking of all the lessons learned and taught. Title the lecture, Power and Patience, The Art of Strategic Leadership. After all, the best revenge isn't about destruction. It's about transformation. Sometimes the quietest person in the room isn't just the most powerful. They're the one most capable of changing everything. The end.